Hello and welcome, and thank you for joining us. I'm James Ball, and I'm joined by Maria Ressa, CEO and Executive Editor of Rappler, to talk about press freedom. But before we sort of jump right into press freedom in 2020, so Maria, what made you want to go into journalism and the kind of journalism that you and Rappler do today?
Oh my gosh. So James, I'm old. I mean, this is so that next year I've been a journalist for 35 years, and I think I fell into it. I walked into the Philippines when People Power happened. That was in 1986. And the way I wanted to learn about my country, the country that I now live in, that where we've set up Rappler, was to do it through the news. And then as I became from 1986 all the way through, I spent almost 20 years with CNN. And during that time period, so much of my identity became anchored on the values, the standards and ethics of news. When you spend so much time at it, this is life. And that's made me who I am. So I guess I fell into it. I grew into it. And by the time Rappler was set up, I guess, it was who I am. I mean, this is why we set up Rappler. We wanted to help create what the future of news was going to be like.
So, and actually, I think when we talk about Rappler and hear about Rappler around the world, we're often talking about the pushback to it, which of course we'll get to. But it's also been an incredible success. I mean, Rappler didn't exist 10 years ago, did it? What's sort of the ethos of it, and why do you think, you're speaking from your officers? I'm very jealous of that right now, and they're lovely officers. Why has it caught on as it has?
So we started Rappler in 2012. It started with 12 people. And, we grew it to about 100 within a year and a half or so. And we've kept it at 100. And I think the reason is because the pillars of Rappler are the pillars that will take us into the next decade, which is technology. We embrace social media. This is part of the reason we felt it's best and we feel it's worst. The second is investigative journalism, accountability journalism, public interest journalism. And then the third is something that news groups in 2012 were not embracing, which is community. The elevator pitch when I was building Rappler as an idea was that Rappler builds communities of action. And then if you think about it now, given the world today, these three pillars are even more critical. So today, Rappler is building its own tech. Tech in the hands of journalists is very different from Facebook, from social media, right? So we just rolled out our new tech platform. It's called Lighthouse, the beacon for facts. Investigative journalism, we have to find ways for journalism to survive this time period, right? And then the last part is our community. This is how we've survived 4 years of President Duterte, 4 years of attacks online, 4 years of the weaponization of the law. We've done it with the help of our community, not just in terms of support, moral support, but physical. They have helped us pay our ballooning exponential legal bills.
And sort of before we sort of fully get onto that, I'm quite interested. One of the big threats and challenges people talk about to journalism in 2020 is sort of disinformation, and social media is often really presented as the enemy and something good journalism is almost in opposition to. I get the impression that's not necessarily your view.
It's only very recently that has become my view. And I'll tell you, so in 2016, that we were, I think, the first news group globally to do a story on the weaponization of social media, Facebook, right? In fact, this 3-part series that we did, the second part of the series the title was How Facebook Algorithms Impact Democracy. So I wrote 2 of the 3-part series, and then I was clobbered with 90 hate messages per hour, right? Per hour. So there was this new weapon. And we knew Facebook better than Facebook because that's what we grew up on. In fact, if it had better search in 2012, we may never have built the site. It just was horrible search. And then, so I guess what happened, we're frenemies. We're also one of 2 fact-checking partners, Filipino fact-checking partners of Facebook. We continue to work with Facebook. I have tried for at least 2 to 3 years to work for change from within. I've gone as far as saying that, if you don't change fast enough, I could go to jail. I have good friends inside Facebook. I know they are working hard, but over the last 2 years, I've also realized that Facebook, the social media platforms, have become behavior modification systems. And, when you are inputting your data into this and machine learning takes it, and then artificial intelligence takes all of that and takes your most vulnerable moment to a message and sells it, whether that's to a company or a country, advertising and propaganda, either way, you're being insidiously manipulated. Why are facts debatable today? It wasn't because of what the White House did or what the UK did or what the Filipinos did. It is because our systems that deliver news actually are designed to polarize society. So in the context of the Philippines, if you think about it like this from 2016, and I'm doing this because in 2016 we were all in the center, as in facts. No one debated facts, right? But the one tech decision of how do they grow their platforms? How do they kind of push all of us to grow? By recommending friends of friends, right? So when you recommend friends of friends, if I'm pro Duterte and I get more friends of friends, I move further right. If I'm anti Duterte and I'm recommended friends of friends and I grow both my network and Facebook, I move further left. And over time, i.e. 4 years, you move further apart. And both of these sides don't see the other sides. They create their own reality. So, what Eli Pariser called the filter bubble early on, well, this is polarizing society. And then the second part is that, and all the research has shown this, lies laced with anger and hate spreads faster and further than boring facts. And you can look at a very comprehensive study in Science magazine in 2018 that showed you exactly 6 to 7 times more lie. And I know this from myself, right? Lies laced with anger and hate. So now we have the very platforms that supposedly give you information, not making a distinction between fact and fiction, and actually spreading the lies faster. I mean, this is a formula for disaster. Without facts, all human endeavor is doomed. This is why we are where we are today.
It's so fascinating. It's as you say, you need this shared pool of facts to be able to have a debate or a conversation. And if you're starting from this world apart, it's so tricky. But as you say, I know from looking at research, if you ask people what they say they want, they will say, oh, I want facts, I want it down the line. If you look at what they read, it's always emotive, it's always partisan. Particularly interesting, you mimed it with your hands. It's this concept of the pyramid of conflict is quite an established one, and it's quite difficult when you get there. And much more than other news organizations, you personally and Rappler and your reporters know the consequences of this. And sort of for people listening to this who won't know, can you sort of describe some of the astonishing pushback you've had trying to operate even in this year and this lockdown?
I mean, on June 15th, in the middle of our lockdown, we're in our 35th week of a lockdown that hasn't really been lifted yet, right? And now we're starting another growth of the COVID-19. Well, so look, on June 15th, I was convicted of cyber libel along with a former colleague for a story that was published in 2012, our first year, and at a time when the law we supposedly violated didn't even exist. And it is for a story that I didn't write, edit, or supervise. And in order to even bring this story to court, the judge had to actually change the period of prescription or the statute of limitations for libel from 1 year to 12 years, right? So the legal acrobatics that have, so here, I face up to 6 years in prison. And that's only one of 8 criminal charges that I face that all told have a maximum penalty of almost 100 years in prison. And look, I hate being the case study of all of the things that go wrong. But I think, part of the reason is because I'm in a very interesting intersection. Not only am I the target of the disinformation and government attacks, but I run a company. I helped start Rappler. And before we were the press freedom kind of, child, we were an innovative news group that was trying to chart the future of news. So I'm in charge of our tech and our business. And then finally, I'm an investigative journalist who's looked at the spread of virulent ideologies, terrorism. That was what I did. My second book is called From Bin Laden to Facebook. I thought that if we can track, if terrorists can convince people to become suicide bombers, why could we not use this for good? That was the motivation for Rappler, right? So, but here's the methodology all around the world. The social media attacks bottom up, exponential. A lie said a million times today becomes a fact. That weakens facts. That polarizes society. The fact that social media platforms actually want to do that because of their business model, that's a whole other story. Then these lies bottom up are met by lies coming top down. In my case, it's President Duterte, right? So bottom up, journalist equals criminal about me. President Duterte in 2017 then says journalist equals criminal. A week after he said that, we got the first subpoena. 2018, the weaponization of the law, 11 cases filed against me and Rappler. 2019, I get 8 arrest warrants. I get arrested twice in a 5-week period, actually. And, 2020, I get convicted. So this is an upside down world. We are living in the upside down. And the costs for telling truth to power have increased. But here's the upside, James. I think globally, all around the world, the journalists have done our jobs. We continue holding the line. We do our jobs. We're on mission. This is where we need the tech to do far more. They've taken over the gatekeeping roles from the journalists. They can't just take the money. They cannot abdicate responsibility because this is what happens globally. And the costs are severe. Sorry, I can talk forever about this, right? Because
please do. But to throw a question to shape it, I think when you're facing such obvious, immediate, top-down threats to your press freedom and your personal freedom from Duterte and from the government and from the, bizarre legal situation you're working in, I think it might surprise some people, your earlier comment saying Facebook could play a role in keeping you out of jail. How can Facebook help keep you out of jail or, put you into it? And what could it do? What if there are Facebook engineers listening, what could they do to improve it and help people like you and help Rappler keep doing what you're doing and holding that line?
I think they've known for a long time what to do. But the problem, of course, is that this means that the business model, the design needs to be rethought. This means growth must be curbed. Because if you think about it, it's like in Brave New World, it's like Soma, right? The design of social media. This isn't just Facebook, right? The design of social media actually uses neuroscience to figure out, which is something journalists don't do, right? We don't do that because we don't want to. We go as far as television news, we try to retain attention, but we don't manipulate in this way, in this kind of 24/7 insidious manipulation, starting with your cell phone. Why can they? Look, I joined 2 groups that are global because these problems are both local. You see the impact on a journalist in the Philippines, and they are global. Because the first step of eroding democracy began with Silicon Valley companies, with U.S. companies, with supposedly American values, really eroding, killing democracy, right? So what can they do? The 2 groups I joined, the first is the Forum on Information and Democracy. And just last week, we released a report, 4 different reports that looks at structural solutions 12 broad goals for tech platforms, for governments, for civil society, and 250 tactical moves that could be done right now. Because in the end, regardless of how you see it, the people who have the power is tech. And this whole thing of, well, you don't want us to be the arbiter of free speech. Guess what? You already are. So you're either going to be responsible or you're not, right? And being responsible, unfortunately, will mean adding friction, adding guardrails, protecting the users, right? So that's one. The second thing that I had joined is something that Carol Cadwallader, who broke the Cambridge Analytica story, along with Shoshana Zuboff, the Harvard emeritus professor at Harvard University, we launched the Real Facebook Oversight Board about a month before the US elections because it was an emergency intervention. And guess what? Silicon Valley sins have come home to roost. And look at what's happened in the United States. Chris Wiley, the Cambridge Analytica whistleblower, he's part of the Forum on Information Democracy. He told us that the Philippines was the petri dish. Cambridge Analytica and its parent company, SCL, experimented in the Philippines. You know why? 110 million people for fifth year in a row this year. We spend the most time on social media globally, right? So he said, we're the petri dish. They tested tactics of mass manipulation here. If it worked, they ported it to the West. You're the targets, we're the guinea pigs. And so I guess what can be done? It's there. I will send you the link. Please read it. Please don't be bored with it because our lives will depend on it. And I think the last part, and I appeal to everyone here, don't think this isn't your problem. The pandemic has really reduced our world to rubble. The world as we know it is gone. And this is now one of those times when lies kill, right? So how do you protect the facts? How do you protect the truth? This is one of those times. I compare it to the end of World War II, when the atom bomb went off and the world was horrified and they needed to come together to protect humanity from the worst of what humanity can do. This is it. Again, another moment like that. What did the world do then? They created Bretton Woods, NATO, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This is one of those moments. What can the world do? What must the world do? I have real skin in the game. I just hope it happens fast enough.
So I think I can say I do too. So I want to ask you one sort of final question. If that's what the world can do, and hopefully some of the people listening who have power to help push that will do, what are you going to do next, and what's Rappler going to do next?
It's really exciting. In fact, behind me, we're just going through our strategic plans for next year. Look, we're crazy enough that in the middle of the pandemic, on World Press Freedom Day on May 3rd this year, we rolled out a new tech platform that we've been building for like a year. We've been dreaming about it for 2 years. And this is a platform which is both a publication platform and a community building platform. So think about it. Now I'm looking at a tech solution to building communities of action. I think the other part is, how does journalism survive this time period? Oh, a lesson for 2019, which is when the government really filed issued all the arrest warrants against me. And I spent 4 out of 5 days in court. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. We journalists, truth tellers, need to look at the world the way it is and imagine it better, build it better. And I think that's the challenge for journalists. And then the last part is we will have to hold the line, but where are the communities? Where are the NGOs? Where are the civil society groups? We need to build communities of action. Now more than ever, by next year, Rappler the organization will turn 10. Our website will be 9 years old, and I'm hoping that 10 becomes a period of rejuvenation. because we have to fight back. We have to protect democracy. And this is it. So you have to ask yourself the same question I was forced to answer 4 years ago, which is, what are you willing to sacrifice for the truth, for facts? Because you have to answer that, because that will determine the kind of world you want to live in.
So I'm going to take that as a very sort of portentous note for us to end on. It's thank you so much for that, Maria. I really enjoyed the conversation. I hope everyone watching did too. And I will now throw back to the team in Lisbon. Thanks very much.